The national debt is bad, right? Trillions of dollars, crippling our economy. China owning us? Burdens for future generations. To find out what you think, we went to the streets. To the streets of Benicia. Stop! So what do you think of the national debt?
Well, all I know is that when Clinton was in office, we had a surplus. Now we have a gazillion-dollar debt.
Bye. It's true. When Clinton was in office, we had a better than balanced budget. What people don't seem to realize is that a deficit for the fiscal year is not the same thing as a national debt. In fact, we have a deficit most years. Even when, in Clinton's years, we had a surplus for the year. The national debt was still there. Let's see what experts have to say about it. Joanne McSchmergel is our legislative analyst. So, Joanne, just what is the difference between a debt and a deficit?
Well, John, a deficit is measured for each fiscal year, and it is when government spending or outlays is more than the income that the government gets from taxes or receipts. The debt, on the other hand, is all of the deficits from every year added up since 1776.
So the national debt, should we worry about it?
Of course we should worry about the national debt. Our children and our children's children and their children will be paying for it for generations to come. And if they can't pay it off, the United States will go bankrupt.
Well, something about that just doesn't seem quite right. You see, the US government uses a policy of rollover. That is to say, when they need money to pay back bonds, they simply sell more. It may not fix the problem per se, but it gets the job done. It certainly won't bankrupt us. When I tried to tell this to Miss McSchmergel, she just didn't take it too well.
No.
After that eloquent response, we headed back to the streets to get more opinions. So not exactly the streets, but the home of Miss Betty Jean. So, Miss Betty Jean, what exactly do you think is the biggest problem with the national debt?
Well, I'm here. China owns more of America than America owns of America. They've got them nukes. We make them mad, they'll go right below us up. They own us. I don't even know anymore. Does this make me Chinese?
No, ma'am. Well, what I think she was trying to express is the concern that we owe too much to China. Yes, we do sell them securities in order to bring in money, but it's really not quite as big as a problem as many people like Betty Jean like to believe. You see, China actually owns only 20% of our debt. Just 20%. Not a majority as people like to believe. In fact, most of our debt is owed to Americans. Americans! Like you and me. Not the Chinese. So, we know what she thinks, but let's take this to the top. We're going to the elite. The top economic professor in the world, Mr. Brandon Andrews. So, Brandon, well, I must say, you look quite young. I swear, if I would have seen you on the streets, I would have thought you were a student.
It happens.
Okay, then. Anyway, Brandon, so about the national debt. $10 trillion.
Whoa, whoa. Let's not get into the numbers yet. As I always say, economics is the opposite of math. You can quote me on that.
I will. So, Brandon, since you say that economics is the opposite of math, what is economics?
Well, the study of economics is all about supply and demand, or San Diego, as I like to say. Where they meet is the point of equilibrium, or when supply equals demand. This is where you want to be, the point of ecstasy. So when our demand exceeds our supply of money at the end of a fiscal year, we have a deficit. We are just spending more than we technically can, which makes Will's head explode.
Now, Brandon, what exactly is the government spending on?
Well, government spending can be separated into two categories: mandatory spending and discretionary spending. Mandatory spending involves the interest we have to pay off on our debt, things like Medicare and Medicaid, Social Security, and other stuff that the government has already agreed and allotted money for. Discretionary spending is like extra spending that the government, usually the president, decides is necessary. So, during the Bush administration, we incurred a lot of debt from things like spending on the war in Iraq and Afghanistan and things like tax cuts and, stuff like that.
You know, Brandon, I usually never agree with the people who I invite on my show, but I have to say, you're actually quite right.
I don't know, John. I just teach it. Here, let me show you on my Mac.
So back to our first question. Do we have to worry about the national debt? Simply put, no! By rolling over our debt, we just slide the responsibility of paying it to our posterity. And I say, let them deal with it in the future. Oh, boondoggle.
San Diego.
America!